What parts of yourself have you been downplaying because you thought success required you to be someone else? When I stopped really trying to fit into everybody else's mold and started showing up as my authentic self, that's when things got easier. Your story isn't baggage. It's actually brand equity. Your story isn't background noise. It's your biggest asset. And what if that thing that you've been trying to downplay or hide, what if that's the thing that was gonna make you unforgettable? Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Lens podcast, where we help creatives and entrepreneurs sharpen their focus, framing, and vision for life. Because when you change the way you see your life, you change the way you live it. I'm your host, Kev T. Now, most people think they need a better strategy, a better plan, or a better blueprint. But what if I told you you might already have one? You see, that thing that you've been overlooking, downplaying, maybe even just straight up trying to hide, might actually be the most powerful thing you have. And that's your story. So in today's episode, we're breaking down why your story isn't something that you should separate from your success, but it's actually the foundation of it. All right, let's get into it. Now, here's where a lot of people get this wrong. A lot of people think that strategies are simply algorithms or branding or marketing tactics. But a real strategy starts way before any of those things even come into play. Because a real strategy actually starts with your story. Right? And the truth is, that thing that you've been through, or the way you see the world, the setbacks you survived, and the lessons you learned, that's not separate from your success. That is actually the strategy that can help you become more successful. Every time before I step onto a set, or I step on, or I try to film something, I always ask myself, or the client that I'm working with, is what is the story, right? Like, what stories are we trying to tell? Because that really shapes our approach to things. Because here's the truth. The things that you've been through, the setbacks that you survived, the lessons that you learned, they don't only shape the way you see the world, but they actually make you who you are. For many of us, I don't know if you're like me, but many people have been taught to downplay those things. You know, try to make everything look polished or professional or make things look perfect. And really what they end up doing is hiding the thing that would allow people to connect with them the most. You know, they lead with titles or services or accomplishments. They read you their resume and all the things that they've done, instead of telling the deeper story that would allow them to really build trust with their audience. Because here's what I learned. People don't connect with what you do as much as they connect with why you do it. And if I'm being honest, I made that mistake too early on in my entrepreneurial journey. So I remember when I was around 22 and I just graduated college, I knew that I one day wanted to own my own business. You know, I was trying to figure it out. I didn't really know where to start because I am one of the first entrepreneurs in my family. And so I remember I had a very false concept of what I thought business and businessmen, business people should look like, how they should carry and present themselves. If I could say it plainly, I had a very false image of what I thought a business person should look like. You know, I thought they had a certain sound. I thought they spoke like this. And yes, hi, how are you? Yes. And I thought they had a certain look. You know, they had to make sure that their suit was pristine and crispy and always having the nicest, crispiest, sharpest looking clothes. You always had to be on point, which that's something I still don't disagree with to this day. But if I'm being real, I would say a lot of that stemmed from the fact that I didn't always see people that look like me in those spaces. You know, even like I talked about this on a previous episode about when I first started on my journey as a filmmaker. You know, I always wanted to be a director and direct, you know, major films and television shows. But I remember growing up, we didn't really have that many examples of successful Black filmmakers. I mean, at that time, we only had Spike Lee. Shout out to Spike Lee. But now, we also had the Wayans family. Shout out to the Wayans family. They are legends in television and media industry. But outside of that, I didn't really see too many others. I mean, now we got the Tyler Perrys. We even see 50 Cent evolving in that space as well. But I just didn't really see people that looked like me thriving in the roles that I wanted to be in. And I remember, and the same thing kind of happened when I started on my entrepreneurial journey. If I could just be transparent, when I thought about business, I never really saw that many wealthy, successful Black entrepreneurs unless you really went searching for them. You really had to go out of your way to go search for them because they were like hidden. They wasn't really promoted top of the Forbes always. So I remember coming into, like, when I started my business journey, I remember saying like, okay, I don't know. I got to be very mindful of how I present myself because obviously I am a man of color. And, when I'm out there doing business, I got to be mindful of that. At least this is what I thought, and to be honest, I thought maybe I had to tone down certain things, and I got to be honest, as a Guyanese American from the Bronx, New York, who is new to the business world, to be honest, I didn't really think that was going to translate well in the business realm. I didn't know. I actually just didn't think that people would instantly trust me or relate to me. I'll be honest with you. I could tell you it was some bad programming I had, to be honest. And without even realizing it, I started to do what a lot of people do. And I started to perform. I thought that I needed to fit into a version of success instead of building one rooted in who I actually was. And that was one of my first major mistakes. Because instead of asking, how can I use who I am to my advantage? I was asking, how do I make myself more acceptable? How do I fit into the crowd? And that's a dangerous place to build from, if I could be very honest. I mean, because we all custom made, like, why are you trying to fit into something when you were made to stand out? And the more I performed, the more I became disconnected. It was just inorganic. And that's a dangerous place to build from, because the more I performed, the more disconnected I became. And not just from the people that I knew, but from myself, because people could feel when you faking the funk, right? I know we always say fake it till you make it, but people can feel when you're being inauthentic. I mean, what the young kids say? When you're capping, right? When you're capping, they can tell when you're capping, right? They could tell when you're being fake, you're not being real. I mean, I don't know. I'm from the Bronx, New York. So as a New Yorker, we just got this thing about us where we could just tell when like our BS meter is going off. Like, yo, you not keeping it 100 right now. And so what I eventually started to realize, like, were the parts of me that I was trying to tone down were actually the parts that really made me different, that made me connect with people because they actually loved who I am. The culture of being Guyanese from the Bronx, growing up watching basketball, watching certain cartoons, listening to certain kind of music, the creativity, all of these things help shape who I am. They help shape the way I think, the way I move, the way I interacted with people. And that wasn't something I needed to hide. And in fact, I realized that was really part of my strategy to help me navigate this world and make it to where I wanted to be. And when I finally stopped trying to fit somebody else's mold and I started showing up as my authentic self, things got easier. And I would say not because business got easier, but because I got real. And when I started becoming more real and being my real self, I started to make real connections. And that's when I realized that people don't trust facade. They trust the truth. So let me ask you this. What parts of yourself are you downplaying because you thought success required you to be somebody else? And what if that thing that you've been trying to downplay or hide, what if that's the thing that was going to make you unforgettable? Just think about that. Now, that lesson became even deeper later in my journey. Some of you may or may not know this, but before Talbot Media came into existence, I did have another media agency. And at the time when I had it, I really believed in it. I was incredibly passionate about it. I was out there on the forefront every single day talking about it, promoting it. Like that thing was my baby. And, I'll be honest with you, I thought I was building something that was going to last. So eventually when it didn't work out the way that I wanted it to, and that chapter ended, I was embarrassed. If I'm being honest, I felt like a failure and I was worried about what people were going to think about me. At this point, everybody knew your boy Smooth Kev T. They always like, oh, Kev. And trust me, this is like not just things that like thoughts that I had in my head of what other people thought about me, but I've actually had people who tell me like, yo, you seem like, oh, you act like you got it all together. You up every single day, you're building this thing, you're going mad hard for it. Oh, you must have it all together. This is things that people that I knew at one point were actually telling me. So when it didn't work out the way that I wanted it to work out, I wasn't even really sad that it didn't work out. Right? Like, okay, whatever. We could probably go start another business, but I was more concerned about what people was going to think about me. Oh, yo, Smooth Kev T. Oh, you saw what happened to Smooth Kev T? Yeah, that silly business that he was out promoting every single day. Oh, yeah, it failed. We knew it was going to fail. I don't know why he was going so hard with that every single day. It was only a matter of time. Matter of fact, I'm glad he failed because he's out here always smiling, being positive every single day, trying to motivate and inspire us to be great. I'm glad something bad happened to him, right? All these things were swarming in my head. And I'm pretty sure people probably said that. They never said it to me, but they probably said it. But the truth of the matter is like, I realized that was all my ego, right? I had this feeling, or I guess you could really say my self-image was wrapped up in the wrong things. You know, because I was more concerned about what people thought about me, how I looked, rather than being real and who I really was. So when I had met this failure, this setback, I was embarrassed because of all these things that I thought were real. You know, I didn't want people to know that I had setbacks. I didn't want people to know that I had doubts, that I was battling limiting beliefs, because I would have felt like a facade. I would have felt like a fake, an imposter, right? How was I telling you every single day to get up and chase your dreams, believe in yourself? And then here I was, I got rocked with one of my biggest setbacks ever in my life, but I wasn't picking myself back up. I wasn't keeping going. I don't know why I thought this, but I actually thought that people were going to lose a lot of respect for me. But then I realized that hiding that story wasn't really protecting me. In fact, it was disconnecting me because I was living in shame for a long time. You know, I stopped posting on my social media and went into like a whole, I don't even say I went to hide, but I went in ghost for a long time because I was like, dang, like how am I going to bounce back from this? Like, what are people going to say? What are they going to think? The moment when I started being honest with myself, with my friends, with my family, with my audience about what I was going through, about what it was going to take to rebuild myself, reinvent myself, pick myself up again after the setback, and about what I was learning about failure instead of pretending that it never happened, that's when, ironically, the weirdest thing happened. I thought people were going to laugh at me and probably trust me less, but they actually started trusting me more. It took more of a liking to me. Like, in fact, my brand, it probably blew up even more coming out of that situation because people were like, yo, like, I'm rooting for you, bro. Like, nah, Kev, you was always somebody I looked up to. Like, to be honest, like, this is a part of the game, bro. Like, trust me, you gonna make it, bro. Don't even worry about it. Like, you a real one. You a hustler. You gonna bounce back, Kev. Or you know what? A lot of people heard me being vulnerable. It allowed them to be vulnerable and start expressing themselves. And then I realized that I started to create a new layer of my community. Like, I had people that were in my community or my network that maybe like we were cool, but we didn't really know each other like that. That came out and was like, nah, like, yo, you hearing you say that in your story, it really changed my perspective on something I was going through. Man, thank you for sharing that. And that's when it clicked to me that people don't connect with perfection. They connect with the truth. They connect with authenticity. They connect with a human being, right? They want to know somebody is real on the other side of this screen. When they watching these videos and they scrolling, they want to know that you're a real person, that you went through something. Because somebody who went through something, picked themselves back up, reinvented themselves, and kept going has a lot more to offer the world than somebody who, one, never even tried, or, you know, maybe they failed once and then was out there telling everybody, oh yeah, this thing doesn't work or this, and they were just being negative about it. So, you know, that setback, that failure that I experienced, you know, that chapter of my life taught me some of the biggest lessons of my life. It taught me how to rebuild. It taught me how to be resilient. it taught me how to reinvent myself. But most importantly, what it really taught me was that your setbacks don't disqualify you. In fact, they differentiate you. Because yes, in my line of work, I ain't the only what Drake said, you ain't the only one trying to be the only one, right? Every day there's a new filmmaker popping up. There's a new content creator popping up. There's a new digital marketing agency popping up. And that's great. And everybody's allowed to compete in business. But what a lot of people realize, like some people in that situation may look at it like, damn, there's a lot of competition. Oh, the market is saturated. But what I encourage you to realize is this is why you need to lean into those parts of your stories that differentiate you, because nobody ever walked your exact same path in life. Nobody's ever walked in the shoes that you in. Nobody has your exact story. Nobody has your exact lens or outlook on life. And in fact, nobody's lived what you lived. And that matters, because your story isn't baggage. It's actually brand equity. Your story isn't something that you need to fix. It's something that you need to frame. So let me ask you this. What setback, failure, or season of your life are you still ashamed of that might have actually created the version of you that we know and love today? What part of your story are you trying to hide? Because I'm pretty sure if you take time to really sit and think about those things that you're embarrassed of, those are really actually your superpowers. You might be saying, oh, dang, I got a weird smile, or I got this weird thing on my nose, or cool, embrace that, because you got a unique nose. So when people know, they see that nose, they're going to stop scrolling because, oh, I know that nose. Okay, I don't know. All right, so what if part of your story that you're trying to hide is actually your superpower? All right, let's think about that. At the end of the day, there will always be other people that do what you do. There's going to be other creatives. There's going to be other entrepreneurs, other businesses. Some of them may be more talented, more skilled than you, but skill alone isn't what makes people connect. People connect with people. People connect with real people, people with energy, with perspective, with truth. And that's why they say your vibe really does attract your tribe. And I could tell you, I saw it firsthand in my business and in my career over these past, 15 plus years. I've been doing this since 2010. I've been working in media, production, marketing, and I literally could tell you, as somebody who I now run a digital marketing agency, I can't even say that I do much marketing, right? Like, I get a lot of my projects because people like me. People see me, they believe in me, and they're like, yo, I want to connect you with so-and-so. I show up, I work with so-and-so, so-and-so's like, yo, like, I like this guy. So-and-so's cool. Yo, you mad cool. And then we start working together, and all of a sudden it's like, yo, you got to work with somebody else. Or even if, like, I've also had times in my career too, where sometimes I start working with somebody and like the project gets a little hiccup. And, sometimes people were upset, but then after a while they got over it. They're like, yo, I'm just honestly glad you okay, because I like you, bro. Like, the work, we could figure out the work. But, you're somebody that I actually love and I like and I respect. So, that's just another testament to show that at the end of the day, like, just being an authentic, real human would take you further than trying to be somebody that you're not. The way you think, the way you move, the way you overcome things, the way you carry yourself, all of these things matter, right? Like, those things that you think, oh, like, this is a weird thing that I do. Embrace that, because that weird thing that you think is weird, somebody else might think is unique and they might like that. I'm trying to think for me, what's another weird thing that I was kind of embarrassed about? And a lot of that is because I felt, like I said, because obviously being a man of color in the business realm was, if I didn't dress in a suit, that people would not take me serious. But then I realized, like, when I started operating in my strengths, a lot of this boils down to alignment as well. When I first started that first business, like around 22, I was still new to marketing and sales and business development. So that our world was foreign to me. All I knew was filmmaking, directing, storytelling, editing, that's all I knew at that point. So that realm of business was very unnatural to me, and I struggled. I struggled very hard. Like I told you earlier, like even something as simple as like having to make a sales call. I was like reading off the script. It was like, yo, bro, what's wrong with you? But then over time, when I realized it's like, yo, yes, you may be reading off of a script, but that script does not need to be word for word verbatim because that's somebody else. You have to internalize that script. You have to make that you. Like, just be natural. Like, just talk to your friend like they're your friend. Now, when I started the media company, that was the world that I came from. So now sitting and talking with somebody about how, you trying to grow this product, or you trying to get your name out there, yo, you need to make a video. When you about to open this venue and these restaurants, you need to make a video. Okay. So eventually when that last business didn't work out, and then I picked myself back up and I said, you know what, I'm going to start Talbot Media. I merged the worlds, right? So I took those things that I learned from that marketing business development realm, which I was once uncomfortable, right? I merged it with the thing that I knew most, which is storytelling, making videos, video production, filmmaking. But then I said, you know what? This is my business. Talbot Media is mine. And I need this to be authentic and feel like me. So when I'm out doing business, I want to dress the way I dress, because when I'm comfortable, obviously, one thing that I believe in is when you look good, you feel good. And when you feel good, you'll do good, or you'll play good, right? And so if I knew that I wanted this business to be as successful as I knew it could be, I needed to be my real authentic self. It was no cap. And that was regardless of if I had the suit on or if I had a nice polo button or whatever I had. I was just going to be me. I was going to be Kev T. And another thing that really helped me was that at this point, I was no longer questioning my skills. I knew I had the skills. I knew when it came to creating content, making videos, that I'm not the best, but I'm one of the best. With that being said, there's a lot of great people out there. If I could just focus on making human connections and not trying to get everybody, like I only want to work with the people that I want to work with and only work with people that want to work with me. That was another thing too that I had to overcome. I felt like in business, at first, when I first came into business, I felt like you needed to close every sale. You need to land everything. And then I realized like, nah, like it don't work like that, because then eventually you're finding yourself working on projects with people that we weren't a match. We didn't view life the same way. We didn't have the same goals. We didn't have the same vision. They didn't have no respect for what I did. They just looked at me like I was a videographer, And so what another shift in my mind was that this person needs me more than I need them. I know that sometimes could come across arrogant, but you also have to realize too that when you're in a business that is offering a skill or a service, that the businesses need to work together, that they need me because my service of making videos and doing marketing is going to help them. So when I came with that perspective of I'm here to serve them, it took a lot of pressure off me. I didn't feel like I needed to act like a businessman who had all the deals and figures together. I said, look, this is what I know. This is what I'm great at. This is what Talbot Media is great at. And this is what we can help you do. And then a lot of people were just like, you know what? I feel that. And honestly, Kev, I feel you, bro. Like, I'm not feeling like you're not BSing me. You're just keeping it real. You're somebody I could connect to, I could relate to. And to be honest, I like working with you and I want to work with you. And then once I started focusing on that, making those kind of connections, the rest started falling into place. So the message I'm really trying to tell you is that when you stop hiding your truth, you stop competing like everybody else. You actually start separating yourself naturally, because your story becomes that thing that people remember about you. Not your skill, not, oh, did he use a Canon or did he use a Sony? Or what lens is that? Oh, and they're like, I don't know what any of that means, Kev. I just know that you're going to show up and do your thing. And that's all I want you to do. Show up and do your thing. All right, so ask yourself this. Are you just building your brand around looking impressive, or are you being real enough for people to actually connect with you? So you're sitting here thinking about this and you're like, okay, Kevin, now you know what? But how do I actually apply this to my life? Okay. So number one, I would say tell it visually. Document something real this week. Not perfect, not polished, not curated, just real. So what does that mean? Okay, you might be sitting in your car. You might be looking busted. Fellas, your hairline is not looking crispy. The waves is not hitting, okay? You might have a patchy beard, okay? Who cares? Press record. Ladies, I ain't gonna touch it on you. I don't know. Maybe, ladies, maybe your eyelash falling off. I don't know. No, if your eyelash falling off, just press it back on, okay? Maybe you got the, I can't even say this, I've seen this plenty of times. I was gonna say, maybe, the lace front showing, okay? Who cares? Just be real, okay? Sometimes we always like, oh, I can't record this because my house looks messy. And it's like, nah, I like watching videos like that. Because this person got a mess like I got a mess. This person is a real person. They're out there building their business, taking care of their family. They're probably raising their kids. Who has time to keep the house 100% pristine? This is a real person who's giving me value. Number 2, lead with context. Next time somebody asks you what you do for a living, don't just tell them what you do. Tell them why you do it. Because purpose connects deeper than profession. In my case, yes, everybody knows I run a digital marketing agency. We specialize in brand strategy, content creation, and social media marketing. Great. So does every other media agency on the internet right now. But why? Okay, well, why? Well, me as Kevin Talbot, one of my life's purposes is that when my number gets called by my creator and I go and I have this conversation with him, he can say, well done, my good and faithful servant. That's number 1. Another thing is I want to leave this earth better than when I came into it. Like, I want people to know that I was here. How do I do that? By telling stories that educate, inspire, and entertain. Right? So that's being intentional about the projects I take on, about the stories that I tell, and whose story I tell. Not just other people's story, but telling my story. Right? All right, number 3, find the through line. What lessons keep showing up in your life? They keep molding you, keep trying to teach you, because somewhere buried in that pattern is probably your message. And when you actually take time to sort through the mess and find your message, you realize that your story isn't random. It's been building your brand this whole time. And honestly, this is exactly why we created the Content Genie session. Because from working with my various clients, I realized that most people don't have a content problem. They have a clarity problem. They've got the story, they've got the lived experience, they've got something real, but they just don't know how to shape it into content that really connects. And that's what Content Genie is for. It's a 60-minute session designed to help take your ideas, your story, your lived experience, and intentionally turn it into content that connects with your audience and fits your brand. So if you're done struggling with how you show up or what to say or how to just stop sounding like everybody else, we got you. Hit the link in the description to book your session. All right, so as we get ready to wrap up this week's episode, here's a couple of things I want you to remember. The story isn't the thing that you overcome before you gain success. Your story is actually the strategy for your biggest success. That is what's going to set you apart from everyone else. Because once you stop seeing your story as something to hide and you start seeing it as something to own and embrace and lean into and be proud of, everything changes. Your story isn't background noise. It's your biggest asset. Okay, so don't forget your homework for this week. Okay, one more time before we get out of here. Somebody write it down. I don't know, maybe we should write it on the board. I don't know. We should write it on the board. Are you gonna remember it? All right, one more time for you. But this week, I want you to write down one part of your story that you've been afraid to tell. Okay? And, whatever that one setback, that one failure, maybe one insecurity, or a time you had to pivot and reinvent yourself. And ask yourself, what did this teach me? How did it shape me? And who could this help? Because one of the things I realized on my journey too was that once I overcame something, I was actually able to help somebody else overcome it. And that's when it made me realize, like, I think God actually gave me this challenge to unlock the next version of who he needed me to be to help the people he needed me to help. So if I stopped hiding that, or if I kept hiding that, then I wouldn't be able to help somebody else. So whatever that is, that one setback, tell it visually. Remember, we don't care how you look. If you look busted, your hairline is chopped, your eyelash falling off, make the video talking about it. Talking about how it shaped you. What did you learn? And put it out there because you can help somebody else with this. Okay? So essentially what I'm trying to tell you before we leave for this week is stop hiding your story because you're hiding your superpower. So there we have it. All right, folks. There we have it. It's another episode of Beyond the Lens podcast. It's in the books. Yo, if this episode hit you, share it with somebody. Matter of fact, and tell us in the comments below which part of your story are you going to be embracing more moving forward? Which part of your story that you've once felt shame about, but now after listening to today's episode, you feel empowered about? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, if you're rocking with Beyond the Lens podcast, make sure you stay tapped in with us. You already know. Do I need to tell you at this point what you need to do? You need to follow. Okay. You need to subscribe and you need to leave a review wherever you listen to this podcast at, because we really appreciate any feedback so we could keep taking this thing to the next level and keep elevating the game and going beyond. Right. Because we want to make sure that this message reaches who it needs to reach, whatever part of the globe, whatever part of this digital internet streets they on, we need to reach them. And every time you like, you share, you comment, you write a review, that helps us in the algorithm. And we really appreciate that. So, man, we just getting started. So thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of Beyond the Lens, how to sharpen your focus, framing, and vision for life. I'm your host, Kev T. Don't forget, keep your focus sharp, your frame tight, and your vision clear, because the way you see your life changes the way you live it. I'll see you beyond the lens. Peace.